All I need is a cell phone and a Wi-Fi connection. And nobody knows that I'm gone. When I'm having calls with my property manager or general contractor to check in, they don't know where I am. They don't frankly care because I'm still paying them and they can get a hold of me. That's really all that matters.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 342. Many, if not most of us, have had to adjust to working remotely over the past 2 years. How many of us, though, have been able to invest remotely as well? My guest today, Michael Albaum, recently left his 9-to-5 job and has found his niche in long-distance, value-add multifamily and triple-net lease investing. For months at a time, he'll either travel the world or travel the country in his van while investing remotely. Michael is here today to talk about nomadic investing and the steps you need to take to be able to do this yourself. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Brian. So happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I love this concept of nomadic investing from your van or anywhere where you might be. I want to learn more about it. But first, tell us about yourself and just who you are and how you got started investing in real estate.
I am a California guy, born and bred. Grew up in Southern California, went to school on the Central Coast, and then was living up in the Bay Area, California. And right when I got out of school, I got this really great professional fire protection engineering job and thought, okay, I've made it. This is my ticket to Easy Street, and then got my first paycheck and saw how much came out in taxes. I was like, oh shoot, I really missed the ball on that one. So read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm sure a ton of your listeners have also had a chance to read. And it really just changed everything I thought I knew about money. And so I decided to start self-educating in real estate. And I said, that makes sense because it's purely a numbers game. I can get behind it. I could understand it because I'm a total Excel guy, being a nerd as an engineer. So I got self-educated for about 2 years and then went and bought my first rental property in Southern California in a market that I was kind of familiar with. It was about 3 hours away from my house. And when that first rent check showed up, I was like, I'm a genius. I just figured out the unlock to all of this. Of course, we all know that's not the case. People have been doing this for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But it really showed me that A, it is possible, and B, the power of rental real estate investing. And so I said, okay, I'll do this once a year for 10 years and have 10 properties. And then that sounded like a good number to me. And so my dad always said, yeah, if you could have that be a supplement to your income, that would be beneficial. That would be great. And I got to a point where I said, well, why does it have to be supplemental? Why can't it be the whole thing? Just keep investing. And so I hit a point in 2019. My father had actually passed away a few months prior. And I asked my work for a leave of absence. And they said, no, we can't do that. And I said, okay, well, then I can't work here anymore. So I ended up quitting my job back in 2019. Fast forward a couple months, I was traveling the world internationally with my wife, having a ball, had two major fires in a development project I was working on, got connected with a company called Roofstock, which is where I'm working now, and run their coaching and education program. So that's what I've been doing ever since, is coaching and consulting, helping people learn how to invest in real estate with an emphasis on doing it remotely.
Tell us how you're doing it remotely. I mean, it sounds like you started with a property 3 hours south of you in California. I don't know how you got that to cash flow, because to me, I used to live in California, nothing cash flows. But talk about that progression, what you started with and how you started building on that to create that passive income that you could travel and invest remotely.
I did it with an interest-only loan because that was the only way it would cash flow. And this was back in 2014. So prices were still starting to recover after the '08 crash. So it was a foreclosure. I bought it for like $300K, $295, something like that, and rented for about $2,000. And so anyone who runs those numbers will tell you, yeah, it doesn't cash flow. But the beauty of an interest-only loan is that, yeah, while the balance isn't decreasing, it cash flowed. And that's what I was concerned with. So that's how I made that first one work. Second one was also in California.
Where in California, by the way?
In Southern California, in a market called Marietta, which is just next to Temecula in Riverside County. a town I grew up going to. And like, if you had asked me 10 years ago why I was investing there, it was just because I knew it, the end. No good reason, no rhyme or reason, no metrics led me to invest there. But fast forward a couple of years, and because of the nature of my work, I was traveling all over the country. So someone else was paying for my flights, my lodging, my food. And because I was a rental property investor at that point, I said, let's look at the market. Wherever I happened to be, didn't care where I was, I would just look at the market. And I was finding that a lot of these markets I happened to find myself in for work, the numbers made sense just from a pure rent to price ratio. So I started investing in Missouri and in Alaska and in Cincinnati. So it just like threw darts at a map wherever I happened to land for work. And that's how I ended up in a lot of these remote markets. And what I realized pretty early on, Brian, was that as you take a dollar outside of California, it goes a lot further. And so I said, from a cash flow perspective, these numbers just make so much more sense. So I said, forget California for now. Let me turn my sights out of state, again, wherever I happen to be for work. And the cash flow was just amazing. And I think it's funny because as Californians, we're so jaded in the sense of what our return profile looks like, what our buy box looks like, that I was buying up everything. And I'm sure all the local investors are like, what a goofus. Like, what is this guy doing? But for me, it was a way better return than I can get in California. So I was thrilled to have that in other states.
Well, I used to live in Los Angeles, so I know that feeling. It's like when you look at other states, everything makes sense. It's like you're in a candy store. Why shouldn't you just buy everything?
Right. That's so true.
But what I found, I was doing a lot of single family, and what I found was on what made sense on paper and reality ended up being break even. What were you investing in, and how did that turn out? I mean, the theory is sound, invest out of state in cash flowing assets. What were you buying, and how did it turn out in reality?
I was buying small multifamily, so duplexes, triplexes, and quads all out of state. And that was just kind of the natural progression for me. I bought single family to start, 2 single families to start, and then said, well, if one is good, maybe 2 is better. From a per door transaction cost standpoint, it went way down and cash flow was up. So I said, okay, this is great. This makes sense. And they were turning out to be really, really profitable. So I was putting an emphasis on buying right, even though I didn't really know that that's what I was doing at the time. I was too green and still too naive to know what buying right meant. I just said, oh, this sounds like a good deal. And so they were penciling out pretty close to what I was projecting. The issue, though, for me was I come from the insurance world. And so I'm very big into LLCs and liability and asset protection. And so this $800 a year California franchise tax was killing me per LLC. So I said, okay, let me get a couple of properties first, group them into a single LLC. And then it started to be really profitable. And I just hit a point where I said, well, I was chasing down so many different property managers. And because anyone who uses property managers will probably share with you that you got to manage the manager. And so it got to a point where it was just too overwhelming, calling 6 different property managers for 6 different markets. And a friend of mine says, Michael, go get specific. Go nail down 1 to 2 markets and hit it hard and watch what happens. It'll blow your mind. And I said, okay, that was kind of counterintuitive to everything I thought I knew about investing, but here I was, a young investor. So I went and focused on one. Technically, it's 2 markets, but they're across the river from one another, and have been really focused there for the last 5 years. And the results have been amazing. It's so much easier to call one property manager to get updates on 6 different properties in the same market, as opposed to 6 property managers for 6 properties in 6 markets.
So what market is it? It's got to be Kansas City if it's the same market across the river from itself.
Close. So it's Covington, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, Ohio.
So that's where you really got specific and started investing. Once you did that, what happened?
A bunch of different things happened. One, the ease of transaction became infinitely easier. I had the same deals coming from the same team that was able to execute in a way that we were already familiar with each other. It's like having any kind of working relationship. After you know someone for a while, that working relationship just tends to get easier. Not only that, but I was able to access different lenders that I wouldn't have likely been able to had I only done one-off deals in the area, because I could show them, hey, I'm an established investor in this market. Look at all these deals I have to prove it. And then thirdly, I was developing a reputation for myself. And this is something that I speak to a lot of the people that I coach and consult with, the importance of. Because if you're a one-off person, no one really knows your name. And this isn't to say egotistically, but simply to say your name gets around, for better or for worse, as someone who does deals. And so get known as someone who does deals in a professional and well-hearted, good-hearted manner. Because I was having agents that I didn't even know cold called me, bring me deals, say, hey, this is right next door to a building you just bought. Are you interested? never in a million years could I have imagined that happened to me. Michael Albaum, like that's not the arena that I played in. So it really blew my mind. And I've been really thankful that my friend gave me that advice, so many years ago. It was like, hey, go do this. And I took a flyer on it.
You started with smaller multifamily, 3 and 4 units, 2 units. Were you then scaling then when you moved to Kentucky and Ohio? Were you buying larger properties? How were you able to scale, and what kind of scale did you get to?
I was buying commercial multifamily, so 5 units and plus. And the first property I bought was an 8 unit. And it was, it is interesting to say, but it was actually the same price as my very first single family all those years ago. And I was like, holy crap, I can buy 8 units for the price of a single family. Like it blew my mind.
Well, that's the difference between California prices and the rest of the country.
Right. So I was value add, which I didn't even realize at the time what that meant or what that was. I just realized, hey, there was something here. It wasn't being managed really well. There were under market rents. And I said, well, if I can get, if I buy it at today's rent, at today's price, it's an okay deal. But if I can get the rents up to market at today's price point, it's a killer deal. And so I was just kind of tweaking things as I was going with my manager, figuring out the value add piece of it as I went. And so once I realized the price point at where in these 2 markets, I was just all in. I was gobbling up as much as I could, as fast as I could. And that's paid off really well because the value add has now been completed. I've done some physical rehab as well as some management improvements, and then just gotten appraisals on some properties, looking to do some cash out refinances. I've sold a couple properties that I've added some value to. And it's really an amazing way to go if you can do it right, with a big emphasis on if you can do it right. The remote aspect of doing this should by no means be understated. It is a challenge, and I've been burned. I've been taken advantage of because I'm the California guy. I must have really deep pockets. Doesn't matter what the reality of the situation is. So I've been burned a couple times, and I've taken on more than I could chew a couple times. So it can be overwhelming, but the rewards, the upside's big too.
If you go back to the beginning, you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go buy a single family. Great. Fast forward to where you are today. You're a coach, a mentor. Now go back to that time when you were scaling in Kentucky and Ohio. What did you not know then that as a coach now you would have told yourself to do differently?
I think it's that you need to settle the eager beaver inside of you. You used the analogy before, which is so apt, a kid in a candy store. Oh my gosh, I could buy everything. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And taking on projects, that was totally new for me because I had bought relatively turnkey in the past. I had done some light rehab stuff, but taking on full gut rehab of 8 unit properties while living in Costa Rica is a tough thing to do. And it is possible, but doing that on 3 separate buildings, maybe not so much. So for me, I realized that there's a lot of brain damage involved with doing this kind of stuff. And so you really have to have an appetite for risk. You have to have a strong gut, and you have to be really well organized to coordinate all the different moving parts. Because just owning rental property, there's enough moving parts as it is. But then adding on a rehab piece of it, a financing component, it just becomes increasingly more complicated, which isn't to say it's good or bad. That's the fact of the matter. And so I wish I had my eyes more open to that when I started investing there in the multifamily value add space, because I would have done things a little bit differently. I would have slowed down a bit.
How are you able to accomplish those things while being a remote investor?
The steps that are involved with purchasing property are relatively universal from the perspective of these are the things that you have to do, at least in the US, to purchase property. Every state has their kind of nuances, but everything I was doing from my house in California, signing paperwork, going to the notary, what have you, sending over earnest money, wiring over money, that's all things that I was doing remotely in California anyhow. So the remote piece of it wasn't new for me, but I think it is for a lot of people. And buying something that you've never seen with your own eyes is also a brand new thing for a lot of people. And so once someone can get over the hurdle of, okay, I don't need to physically see it, touch it, smell it, taste it, whatever you're going to do during due diligence with the properties that you're purchasing myself, I can have someone else do it. Well, that is a total unlock. You could be anywhere in the country buying property, and then you could be anywhere in the world buying property. It's funny, I was in Panama couple years ago, and I was closing on a property, and I was trying to get an appointment at the embassy, the U.S. embassy in Panama City, but the embassy would only allow for 4 notary signatures per appointment. And I couldn't get a back-to-back appointment. So I was like, oh my God. So I had to fly. I took a flight from Panama City to Miami, Florida to sign and notarize docs, and then flew back to Panama City later that night. And everyone at immigration's like, you just got here. I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, don't worry. It's like for business. So like you can do that kind of stuff. There are workarounds, and there are worldwide electronic notaries that a lot of places are accepting now. So I think once you can divorce yourself from the physicalness of being wherever the property is or being wherever the closing agent is, literally the world becomes your oyster.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com.
How do you then deal with all the issues that come up? You know, the flood that's ruined a unit that needs to be addressed, and you have to decide how much money to put into it, and just all the on the ground things that happen through that ownership and that managing of the manager and all that. How do you accommodate all that?
I personally leverage property managers for all of my properties with the exception of like 1 or 2, and those are California-based properties. So I think that you've got to have a really strong partnership, working relationship with local personnel if you are going to be investing remotely. And one of the things that I personally enjoy about the remote aspect of investing is that it forces me to get really good at that kind of stuff. And it prevents me from physically going to the property to address the problems that I think so many people talk about and poo-poo when they talk about rental property investing. Oh, you invest in rental properties, have fun fixing toilets in the middle of the night. No, I literally can't. Like, I have a property manager that has to deal with those things. That's what I pay them for. So there's a degree of having local personnel, local expert personnel that you rely on and that you trust. And that trust takes time to develop. And so nurturing and fostering the relationships that you're building as a remote investor, I think are hypercritical. I mentioned earlier that I had 2 fires in a building that I was doing a redevelopment project on. I had to go meet the insurance adjuster on site. It was in Nicaragua, and I was dealing with these phone calls back and forth, and the insurance company tried to pull a fast one. So I ended up hiring a third party to come be my advocate. I went out there and met them in person and walked the site. That kind of stuff, I think you have to be hands-on for. But coming from the insurance world, that's like once in a blue moon. It's super unlikely that anyone's going to experience a fire in their property just based on statistics. So I wouldn't let that worry keep you up at night. Like, oh my God, I live over here. I can't invest over here because I might have to go deal with a fire. That's like, the very off chance. But for everything else, the vast majority of it, I think that you really can do it remotely successfully.
Talk about that process of being remote. I know that you traveled around for 7 months in your van. You've traveled internationally. What's that like to be driving around in your van while still asset managing your portfolio?
I mean, it's something that I'm always thinking about. It takes up a lot of mental space for me. But at the same time, there's this kind of beauty and freeness to it because of the fact that, like, we're doing this interview right now. I'm in my van. I have Wi-Fi. I have cell connection. So it becomes like a mobile home. And that's where the term comes from, right? Mobile home. So you can take this stuff on the road with you. And all I need is a cell phone and a Wi-Fi connection. And nobody knows that I'm gone. When I'm having calls with my property manager or general contractor to check in, they don't know where I am. They don't frankly care because I'm still paying them and they can get a hold of me. That's really all that matters. And so for 99% of the issues that come up to manage an asset, it can be done with a Wi-Fi connection and a computer or a phone. And I think that so many of us get tied to a location or a desk or something physical, feeling that that's what you need just in case because of the what ifs. And once you realize that a lot of these problems can be solved with a phone call, it becomes very, very freeing and very empowering.
If you're traveling around and you are still working, are you really enjoying the benefits of traveling? Or are you still just working, but now you also have to drive at the same time?
It took us a while to get good at this in our van. When we were international, it was much easier. But when we're driving, yes, that definitely adds a layer of complication. But I think that we're fully enjoying. And last night, my wife and I, we camped on the beach. And after work, we went and took a 2-hour beach walk. Like, that's not something that we do when we're living at home, just because we don't live at the beach. And so we've also gone for hikes. We literally walk out of our van with camp in state parks or national parks, and you go for hikes after work, or in between calls, you get out for a hike. And so I think living on the road, it allows you to do things, and it almost forces you to do things a little bit differently than you would at home. And so it kind of helps you break the mold. And from an international perspective, everywhere we went for the most part was new. There was some new restaurant to try, some new experience to do, some new hike or surf break to surf. So it becomes so easy when you're there, as opposed to I'm on vacation. I have to do all these things because my vacation's only a week. And now by the time I'm done with my week vacation, I'm exhausted and I need to reprieve, but I got to go home and back to work. So it just adds another layer, a new element of kind of excitedness. And I think, to be honest, it almost smooths things out. Because it's not this, I have go. Oh, settle back down. Go. It's just kind of this even keel, if you will.
Because if you're going to be traveling to some new location, you're still going to be able to work and be on the phone or the computer.
Exactly.
You mentioned having a cell phone, a Wi-Fi connection. What else do you have to be successful, to be a nomadic investor?
Well, I've got an unfair advantage in that I have a wonderful wife, a partner, and a great dog. So those things always can be helpful. Someone to support you when things don't go well. And that can be a partner, a friend, a parent, what have you. So those things definitely help. But I think getting back to the trusted partner piece of things, if you're going to be doing this remotely, you've got to have systems in place and you've got to have local personnel that you can rely on and call on. Because if you've got to physically go to the location every time something goes wrong, that makes it a lot tougher. So Wi-Fi connection, cell phone, dog doesn't hurt, trusted partner locally, and then trusted partner wherever the property is as well.
Regarding having a partner with you, your wife is very accepting of this lifestyle and seems like she enjoys it. Do you ever feel guilty because you're in an incredible location, but you have to be on the phone for 3 hours? Wow, she's waiting for you.
A little bit, but she's pretty good. She doesn't have to wait. And she's made that clear and I've made that clear, like, hey, go do whatever it is we're here that you can do. I've got to deal with this. I'll catch up with you in a bit. And so we're both pretty independent people in that way, which has been amazing, especially while living on the road in a van.
Just to be clear, are you able to do this, be a nomadic investor, because your real estate investments are throwing off enough passive income that allow for you to have this lifestyle? Or is there something else that allows you to have this lifestyle?
Yeah. So back in 2019, when I left the corporate world, it was purely because of the real estate that I had acquired over the prior decade. And then I mentioned I had those 2 fires in this building. And so I said, well, I should probably get some more income because that was not something that I planned for. The expenses kind of went through the roof as I was going through this 2-year insurance battle. And so I picked up some more freelance consulting. And that's really when I got connected with Roofstock and was managing and running their coaching and education program. So that's been helpful as far as the income perspective. But the fact that that's totally remote as well, because I picked up that job while I was in Costa Rica. And so being remote from a job or income perspective is beneficial. And then also having the remote real estate piece of it is also super helpful. So really anyone can do this. And we've met tons of people on the road that are doing this that don't have any real estate, but just have a remote job, a remote W-2 or a freelance gig that allows them to be really anywhere in the world.
You do have a job with Roofstock, so you do have ordinary income coming in to help supplement your nomadic lifestyle and pay for the gas in your van.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Especially right now, $7 a gallon for diesel. It's crazy.
So you got to make a lot of money to be able to afford the nomadic lifestyle. Tell us about Roofstock, because you've mentioned it a couple of times. I'm vaguely familiar with it, but real briefly, what is it and what do you do for them?
So they've looked to position themselves to be the number one marketplace to buy and sell mostly single family rental homes. So think of it like the eBay of real estate investing. They are the connector. They're the marketplace that facilitates the transaction for buying and selling of homes, as well as portfolios and then some small multifamily. And so they reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking to start this education program. Would you mind helping us put it together? As that evolved, we said, hey, there's a coaching element to the education program. Would you mind coming on as a coach? And I said, yeah, sure. Talking about real estate is something I enjoy doing anyhow. I'm happy to get paid to do that now. So I'm the program manager for the Roofstock Academy, which is the education program that I've mentioned. And it's really for anyone that is looking to get involved in real estate investing or is a seasoned investor looking to get involved in a different asset class or scale their portfolio. We've got self-paced lectures, one-on-one coachings, private Slack channels. So really we have a space for anyone that's looking to get involved or is actively involved in the real estate investing space. And we do a lot of it remotely. Doesn't have to be, but a big emphasis is on remote.
What advice do you have for our listeners? Those who would like to travel more, have that nomadic lifestyle where they can travel and invest and kind of do what you're doing as well. What would you say to them to be able to put the pieces in place to make that happen?
I think you have to get really honest with yourself and those in your family around what it is that's holding you back from doing that. And for a lot of people, it's a mortgage. I got a mortgage. I could never do that. Well, I have a mortgage too, and we rent out our house when we're on the road. We're house hacking. We have basically a duplex. So we rent out the top unit pretty much full time. Bottom unit we rent out when we're on the road. And that pays for the mortgage and then some. And the other thing I would say is that you don't have to do this full time. Go try it out for a week. And you don't even have to be on the road. Go pick a hotel. Go pick a city that you've always wanted to go to. Get a hotel for a week and try working there and see what that's like. We kind of jumped in 2 feet and it forced us to work, but we were in a situation where that was okay. We could kind of afford to do that. And it was okay if we failed. If it didn't end up, well, we just go back home. But I think you have to be really honest with yourself. And again, your family, what's holding you back? And are there ways around it? Because so often, this is all we can see, or we get in our own way. Not to beat a dead horse, getting honest with yourself and those around you is, I think, what would allow people to do this.
Well, how would people find out more about you, get a hold of you, possibly engage your coaching services?
Come check me out at roofstockacademy.com is where we got all of our Roofstock stuff. I'm on Twitter, fairly active. It's at Michael Albaum. And then you could also find me on LinkedIn if you just search Michael Albaum, Albaum.
And you host a podcast as well that's like 3 days a week, which is incredibly impressive. Tell us about that real briefly.
Yeah, so I also co-host on the Remote Real Estate Investor. It's Roofstock Academy's podcast where we talk about real estate investing with an emphasis on remote, since that's what our niche kind of looks like. And we have guests on from real estate investors that are just getting started to very experienced investors to industry professionals. Anything that we think would be valuable for our listeners or we've heard from our listeners would be of value to them. We try to have guests on to talk about and educate folks on things they need to be aware of as they're getting involved in the space.
I've really enjoyed this conversation talking about remote investing, the nomadic lifestyle. I've appreciated your examples of traveling around in the van, traveling internationally, and some of the issues that you've dealt with and how you've overcome them and made it work for you and your lifestyle. Thank you so much for having this conversation today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks so much, Brian. My pleasure as well, and appreciate you having me on.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and